For 100 years, three regions built every car that mattered. Germany engineered precision, Japan perfected reliability, America scaled production to a size the world had never seen. The industry they built was not merely an economic sector, it was a civilizational achievement, accumulated across a century of iteration and investment. In 3 years, a company most people outside China had never heard of walked into that system and dismantled it. Not gradually, not partially, systematically and at a pace that left the established players with no coherent response. Mercedes down 28%, Porsche losing 92% of its profits in a single year, Volkswagen cutting 50,000 jobs and closing factories it had operated for decades, Stellantis posting a $26 billion loss. Its worst result in history. Behind every one of those numbers, the same name, BYD, Build Your Dreams. A company that began as a battery manufacturer in Shenzhen in 1995, mocked by the Chinese financial press when it entered the automotive market, and that by 2024 had outsold Tesla to become the global leader in electric vehicles. The question Western governments, investors, and automakers have spent 2 years trying to answer is whether what happened was competition or something else entirely. To understand BYD, it is necessary to understand what it is not. It is not a startup that disrupted an industry through technological breakthrough alone. BYD is the most visible expression of a Chinese state strategy called Made in China 2025, a national industrial plan launched in 2015 with the explicit objective of achieving global dominance in 10 strategic industries, of which electric vehicles was among the most prominent. That plan committed billions of dollars in government subsidies, preferential land allocation, cheap state bank loans, and procurement advantages to companies in designated sectors. BYD was among the primary beneficiaries. The competitive advantage it carried into global markets was not built solely in its factories. A significant portion of it was built in government ministries. The scale of state support has been the subject of extensive analysis by trade bodies and independent researchers. Estimates of total government subsidy received by BYD run into the tens of billions of dollars. Figures that, if accurate, mean that the price of every BYD vehicle sold internationally carries within it a subsidy that no private Western competitor can replicate through efficiency alone. The European Commission launched an anti-subsidy investigation in 2023 and concluded that Chinese EV manufacturers had benefited from substantial state support that distorted competition. Tariffs were imposed. The United States had already placed tariffs of 100% on Chinese EVs. The measures were significant. They were also, by most assessments, too late to reverse what had already happened across Southeast Asia, Latin America, and parts of Europe where BYD had established positions difficult to dislodge. What made BYD's market entry particularly hard to counter was its pricing. The company entered international markets at price points its internal cost structures, on paper, did not fully explain. Analysts comparing BYD's reported manufacturing costs against its international retail pricing identified what they described as predatory pricing, selling vehicles at or below the true cost of production to capture market share rapidly, absorbing short-term losses sustained by the cushion of state support. BYD disputed this. Its defenders pointed to genuine manufacturing advantages, extreme vertical integration, producing its own batteries, semiconductors, motors, and components that competitors source externally, creating a cost structure Western manufacturers genuinely could not match. Both things can be true simultaneously. The cost advantage is real. The subsidy is also real. The combination created a competitive proposition the Western automotive industry had no framework for addressing. Beneath the growth narrative, a more complicated picture has emerged. Analysts examining BYD's balance sheet identified hundreds of billions of yuan in supply chain financing arrangements, off-balance sheet obligations that do not appear in headline debt figures. The comparison to Evergrande, the Chinese property developer whose collapse in 2021 exposed a similar gap between reported and actual financial obligation, has been made by multiple independent observers. BYD rejected the comparison. The underlying question, what the full extent of BYD's financial commitments actually is, has not been definitively answered by publicly available information. The sales figures BYD reported for 2025 attracted their own scrutiny. Claims of approximately 4.25 million vehicle deliveries were challenged by automotive journalists who identified evidence suggesting a portion of vehicles recorded as new sales had been registered without reaching genuine end customers, a practice that inflates near-term figures at the cost of future demand. BYD disputed these characterizations. What is independently verifiable is that BYD issued recalls covering tens of thousands of vehicles across 2024 and 2025 for quality-related issues, a data point that sits uneasily alongside its positioning as a premium technological proposition. By early 2026, the trajectory that had seemed unstoppable was showing measurable strain. Profits declined 19%. Sales fell in key markets. The company that had appeared to represent an irreversible shift in the global automotive order was confronting the possibility that its expansion had moved faster than its foundations could sustainably support. None of this resolves the central question: whether BYD represents the legitimate triumph of a nation that decided to compete seriously and succeeded, or a state-engineered disruption that exported its costs to workers in Wolfsburg and Detroit who had no voice in the strategy, is a question different observers will answer differently. What is not in dispute is that the industry that existed before BYD arrived will not return. 50,000 Volkswagen jobs are not coming back. The closed factories will not reopen. The shifted market share will not reverse simply because tariffs exist. The affordable electric car that parks itself and charges overnight was not built purely by engineering genius. It was built by genuine innovation, extraordinary manufacturing discipline, and state resources deployed at national scale through trade rules written for a world that no longer exists. Whether that constitutes competition or something that requires a different word entirely, will shape not just the automotive industry but the broader contest between economic systems that defines the decade ahead. If this changed how you see the companies you trust, follow for more. Every story we cover is built on the same foundation: the gap between what was presented and what was real. Follow now and never miss one.